I played Europa Universalis 5. Not only did I do that, I dropped 2 videos about it so far, showcasing my experience, showcasing the game, breaking down certain mechanics about it, giving you guys my opinion on the way certain things look and the way certain things work, and pretty much telling you everything I could think of about my experience playing EU5. But you guys still had questions, a lot of questions. So that's what I'm here to do, ladies and gentlemen, today. Answer all of your burning EU5 questions that you guys have left on the channel and in the Discord over the past couple of days, breaking them down to the best of my ability. And I hope to answer everything that I know how to answer. So without further ado, here's your burning Europa Universalis 5 questions answered. Alright, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, on my second to last video where I broke down the in-depth mechanics of EU5 to the best of my ability, and this is the video on which I asked you to ask all your questions about Europa Universalis 5. So, obviously, a lot of you guys are giving your opinion on all the things I gave my opinion on in this video, but there is a couple of questions in this video, and there's a lot more in Discord, so stay tuned when I read from there. But the first question right here that I can see is, can you return to the main menu without rebooting the game? GNU1232, I am so happy to say that yes, you can return to the main menu without rebooting the game. It's so simple. You just hit escape, hit exit to menu, and you're right there. Even better, you don't even have to exit to the main menu to switch your country, unless you're playing an Iron Man, of course. All you can do is click escape, click switch country, and the game sort of zooms you out of whatever country you're playing, and you can just click on another country you're playing, and boom, you're right in there. You don't even have to exit to main menu if you want to sort of check out countries and what they offer before you start playing as one of them. So that's a great feature. Next question right here. Would love to know how it is to play as a nation under another nation. How is it to play as a vassal or junior partner? So vassals and junior partners and any other types of subjects have been quite heavily revamped in EU5, ladies and gentlemen, to where there are certain levels of how much control you have over them. Not especially vassals, but I'm gonna tell you a little bit about personal unions. So the way personal unions work, and I'm gonna give the example with Hungary and Croatia, because they do start off as a personal union right at the start of the game. See, they are in a union together. The ruler of Croatia is also the ruler of Hungary, or actually vice versa, the ruler of Hungary is the ruler of Croatia, but that's it. You know, I didn't showcase this in my video, but there's this little menu at the bottom at the center of the screen where the international organizations are. That's your union. You go ahead and open up that menu, and there are various laws that you can vote on in the union. For example, you guys can vote, and both countries vote, by the way. Obviously, as one nation that you're playing, you can try and steer it towards a certain way, but, you know, you can vote on how much money goes into the union. What level of integration will the union have? Will it be just sort of defensive? And of course, the ultimate level of integration is just like in EU5, where the junior partner does the bidding of the senior partner. But in my example, as Croatia and Hungary right here, Croatia at the start, even though it's just in a union with Hungary, it's not even a junior partner or anything like that, and Croatia can do pretty much whatever it wants. Get into independent wars, gain land, lose land. The only thing they have in common with Hungary is the ruler. There are levels to integration, like I said, and if you are in a union, obviously you're gonna wanna maximally integrate all your junior partners. And if you're in a union and you're the junior partner, not really. You could still do it vice versa as Croatia and become the senior partner. Next we have right here, how is border war? Does the AI expand randomly or along set paths? Muscovy forming Russia with nearly historical borders and no border war. I would say the level of border war might seem more dramatic in EU5 just because the provinces, or sorry, the locations are so much more and they're so much more granular, but the AI countries expand pretty similarly to how they expand in EU4. You know, sometimes you'll see border wars, sometimes you won't. It's not like they go for pretty borders or anything like that, or historical borders. Next right here we have, how was the multiplayer? Did you try any more than 2 people? How stable was it compared to Paradox games? So we did actually try multiplayer. Me and Lath did. I mentioned this in this same video that I'm looking at the comments from. We played as super tiny nations in the HRE. MP, at least between the 2 of us, was really stable. There was no speed problems. We could go with speed 5. But that's, of course, you know, we got pretty good PCs and we got pretty good internet, both of us boys. So speed between us and any Paradox game, at least between the 2 of us, has never been an issue. But, you know, in an early build like this, man, when people aren't really on the servers playing MP just like they would when the game is released, I don't know if I can say, but performance was good. We didn't have any crashes or any lagging or anything like that. How stable is it compared to other Paradox games? Better than any other Paradox game I've done. But once again, let me say, this was only the two of us when, I don't know, like 50 people in the world, including the creators and the developers, have access to EU5, and no one else was playing it at the same time. I don't know if that impacts it. I'm not an expert in these things, but it was pretty good. We didn't have any problems. Can you show us Native American gameplay? I saw like 2 nations near the Great Lakes, just interested how these nations work as of now. So no, right now I can't show you Native American gameplay. I don't have access to the game anymore. There are many nations in North America and South America, ladies and gentlemen. Some are like, you know, actual countries. Some function like that. There aren't that many of them. I know 2 or 3 big ones right about in the center of North America, some near the Great Lakes and whatnot. Then, of course, you have the Mesoamerican guys and the South American guys. Those are like actual countries, like settled countries if we compare it to EU4. But if you go into the different map views, for example, army or building-based countries or pop societies of people, whatever you want to call it, it's pretty much full of societies of people. How will that work? I'm not really sure. I didn't really get into any like native gameplay or colonization in order to encounter those guys, but yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty good, man. I like the way that these different types of people and people groups are represented in different types of ways based on how integrated and how advanced they were. Have you played Croatia? Do you know if it has any additional content, and has it survived through your playthrough? Yeah, Croatia usually survives, man. I've never seen them like in the playthroughs that I did. Actually, no, in one playthrough they did lose land. I can't remember to who, but yeah, usually they survive. I don't think it has any unique content. Don't quote me on that because obviously I can't check right now, but yeah, not sure. I don't think they have unique content. It's still gonna be cool to play them though, because they're in a union with Hungary. Like I just said, the thing about the unions, you can sort of push to become the senior partner as Croatia if you become influential enough and powerful enough, which of course you can do by expanding on your own without Hungary getting involved. Interesting question right here from Crocworks. What is stopping every single country from making their own market? When would you not want to make a market despite not having your own individual market? I wouldn't want to see the HRE split itself into 300 different markets. Voltaire's market nightmare. So interesting. I never noticed the AI creating its own market. I think the AI, at least for now, always stays in the market that it's, I don't know, started in. Locations, sure, can shift from markets to markets, but I haven't seen nations create their own market. When would you not want to make a market despite not having your own individual market? I mean, it's an interesting point, man. I guess at a certain point, you become big enough and, you know, your individual market that you've conquered or that you've started has expanded to where it's big enough to where it can't grow any bigger and you're just conquering different markets. For example, let's say, I don't know, you're playing as the Ottomans and you conquer, you know, Anatolia, you conquer the Balkans over here, and maybe your main market is Constantinople and you're making so much money and you just conquer like Genoa and Venice and Naples and whatnot, right? You wouldn't want to make an individual market there. In fact, I probably, as the Ottomans, also wouldn't create an individual market because very soon we're gonna become dominant in the Constantinople market, which we're gonna conquer. So if you're gonna conquer a big portion of an already existing market very soon, I would say that's probably when you don't want to make your own market, at least the way the game is right now. I know they're changing a lot of things to do with trade. Hey Red Hawk, does the HRE have any different mechanics than EU4? Do they still have Imperial Authority mana to pass reforms in the Empire? So the way the HRE works in EU5, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very different to how it works in EU4. In EU5, obviously, it's an international organization. We're familiar with these things right now. There are various members. You know, it's not just the emperor, electors, and free cities. You know, you got all these unique names for bishops, and then elector bishops, and these types of free cities, that type of free cities, peasant republics, and whatnot. So there's all these different governments and stuff in there. And the way reforms work, I guess, would be like I just explained with the unions a little bit ago. There are various laws that can be like proposed to be voted on. How much every nation in the HRE contributes to the HRE, and stuff like that. I haven't really gotten involved into how you progress your gameplay as the HRE, but from what I've seen at the start, and I have played in the HRE, it's just a typical international organization. Someone proposes something, other people vote on it, you spend certain money on it. In order to benefit the whole thing, you get certain benefits out of it. For example, a thing about being in the HRE is you can't no CB someone, for example, right? So you always need a CB for there. So it does work very differently to EU4. Do they have Imperial Authority mana to pass reforms? Not really, but there is passing reforms, but it's like laws and lots of voting. It's way more complex, way better than EU4. Is there a lot of inflation events? How do you lower it? I wouldn't mind 2% inflation keeping the nation moving along. So there's no inflation events, at least not from what I've noticed. I don't think so, like not a lot at least. The way you get inflation primarily is by minting, right? You can mint in the balance tab right at the start. And, based on the amount of money you mint, if you mint too much, you keep getting inflation. But then let's say you have 0 inflation at the start. You mint a lot of money, you climb up to 2 inflation, then you mint way less or almost no money, and inflation goes down. So I think it's a little bit easier, honestly, to deal with than in EU4, because in EU4, obviously, you use admin points to lower it down. There's no admin points here. It's primarily related to minting and loans and stuff like that. Okay, 2 very interesting questions from this person right here. If my country revolts against me, are the rebelling army soldiers taken out of my pops and or my manpower? So the revolts that I face right now, obviously, because as most countries, you don't even have manpower at the start of the game, they do come out as the pops. So let's say you're playing as, I don't know, Hungary. You got, and I'm just making stuff up here, I don't remember the exact numbers, 10 million people. You conquer Wallachia, you get 500,000. The Wallachians revolt. Those 500,000 Wallachians revolt, and they pop out as a separate country. You beat them up. It's pretty easy to beat them up, honestly, at least the revolts that I've faced and the rebellions. You beat them up and they get reabsorbed in a country. Of course, rebellions are annoying because they stop certain things or they slow down certain things, like integration of provinces, increasing control. You might have been building buildings over there. So yeah, it does get taken out of your population. Bro, imagine it like real life. It's not so abstract, just like it's in EU4. Imagine the Hungary Wallachia example I gave. You conquer the Wallachians, they rise up, they're a part of your population. And then the second question from this person, forming countries is a fairly big deal in EU4, and usually forming a country is a good milestone for how far you've progressed in the game. Does EU5 place the same relevance to forming countries, and are the payoffs immediate like they are in EU4, where you get an immediate benefit from new ideas? So, no. Forming countries is completely different in EU5. It's not as big of a milestone as it is in EU4. It's not the same importance, and there are pretty much no payoffs because, EU5, if EU4 was all about stacking modifiers from missions, from national ideas, from events certain countries gotten, you flip all the cultures, form this, stack admin efficiency, stack CCR. It's not like that in EU5 at all, because EU5 is explicitly anti-modifier stacking. So there's very few benefits to forming a country. I mean, benefits. It's not like you're not gonna do it if you can do it. It's just that you're not gonna get those bonuses. And the bonuses, I think, dude, I can't remember this right now, boys, so don't quote me, but I might have read that the bonuses or the age advances or whatever you call them, they don't stick around from the previous nation that you were if you form a different nation. You get completely different ones or something like that. Don't quote me on this. I might be wrong on that one, or they do stay, in which case there was no point in me saying it. But yeah, forming countries, definitely not as big of a deal. I think way harder, way less nations to form right now. So yeah, I would actually like for it to increase relevance like in EU4. Interesting point from this person right here. So there are a couple of questions here. If rivers and seas function as roads. Now, no, rivers aren't navigable in EU5 like they are in Imperator, I think, but seas also don't function as roads, where obviously we can ferry armies in between, but they do increase control, for example, if depending on where you are. For example, if you take a look at England in EU5, London's right there down at the south, and England has bigger control over some of its holdings in France than some of its holdings in Northern England, just because it's closer, even though it's across the sea, right? So it does work like that. Another thing is here, I noticed that the church was taxed in your game. That's a bit surprising, considering that for most of the period, the church was exempt from tax. Is this specific to Serbia, or can all Christian nations tax the church? It depends on what privileges they have, mostly. That's the answer to that question. Finally, do you think the game will be good and interesting at launch even without DLCs? Yes, I do, man. I think a good amount of nations will have flavor, and I think mechanics are good enough to where it'll be interesting. Later, of course, we'll get even more flavor with DLCs, maybe new mechanics, but I think it's in a pretty good point right now to be good without DLCs. Of course, assuming they fix all the things we want fixed. So a pretty long question right here by this person. You can go ahead and pause the video to read it fully, but if we get down to the gist of it, is basically, do I feel like winning wars is too easy? Because in this video that I'm showcasing the comments from right now, I did win my war versus Byzantium in 6 months. I don't think winning wars is too easy right now, at least in the early portion of the game. I do think it's more realistic than in EU4, right, man? To get back to the whole thing, you don't gotta do all-out wars. You don't gotta full occupy the country for 100% war score. And because things cost so much with certain CBs that you use at the start of the game. For example, I give you another example. When playing as Serbia in a different playthrough, I declared on Bosnia. And it was, I did it with a no CB, and I did it with an insulted us CB, both of which you get from the parliament. Now, those are most of the CBs you're going to be using at the start of the game. So even if the war might be easy, and if you wrap it up in a year or whatnot, and if you crush their armies and full siege everything, you still really can't take that much. You can only take about, half of Bosnia or 2/3. And if you do the same with Byzantium, you get coalitions. So are wars too easy? Maybe they're a bit too fast, honestly. But, some wars, man, you can win them without occupying any forts, which I like. Other nations, bigger nations, or nations with forts, definitely on par with EU4. But if you encounter situations where you don't gotta siege forts, might be a little too easy. But hey, not all of them are like that, are they? This person says, a lot of folks have said that the control mechanism is an anti-blobbing feature, and that makes me wonder, if you take swaths of land probably at 0% control, there isn't much upside. But is there a downside, or does the land just sit there? I mean, the downside is, boys, pretty much like conquering land and not even coring it in EU4. That's the way I can explain it, man. Of course, control has nothing to do with coring. It's more like autonomy. But if you take it and there's 0% control, the only way you can have 0% control is if it's not even integrated and if you haven't built roads or anything like that. So the downside is you have all this land, it's not doing anything. You're not getting money from there. You're not facilitating trade. If you build these guys' buildings, it's wasted money. The population doesn't like you. It'll revolt often. So control, I wouldn't necessarily say is an anti-blobbing feature, because you can take a look at it like autonomy. But if you do have 0 control lands, yeah, there's no upside, but everything else is the downside. It's like your name is on the map, but everything else about it is bad. For EU5, is there any areas in the game that stands out to you as already needing an expansion or more features? I mean, not to get into the missions again, boys, even the guys from Paradox have posted over on the Reddit and everything that missions are being worked on right now. They're definitely not gonna be the same like we saw them right now. What are they going to be like? I don't know, but that's the feature. I think it needs expansion. More features? I mean, maybe there's room for 1 or 2 or 3 more cabinet actions that I can't even think of right now. I think that it's nice that can get expanded. Religions, I think, at least the major ones, maybe need a little more features aside from the whole, religion being featured in a sort of international organization like it is for Catholicism and the patriarchates and Orthodoxy. But yeah, maybe a little bit religion. Missions, we'll see what it turns out with. So yeah, aside from that, man, the how do I say it? The base, the base of the game is really, really solid. I think the mechanics are definitely there. Do Byzantines and other Greek minors have unique unit models and units, or is it generic Eastern like in Vanilla EU4? I never noticed that. I never played that zoomed in. Is the cost of raising stability gonna cost more if your stability is higher than it is in EU4? Yes. Stability does cost more if it's higher, so does legitimacy, but if you max them out, let's say you're 100 legitimacy and 100 stab, you're still spending money to maintain it at 100. But yeah, another question right here. I feel like this was already answered in the video, but what happens when you zoom in on the map? Does a country color turn transparent like in VIC 3 when you fully zoom in? And if so, was there an option to turn that off and keep the color full even when fully zoomed in? Yes. This is what happens by default, like in VIC 3 or in CK3. You can turn it off completely, like it was in my video. A question here about production trade. You said you could stockpile food. That makes me wonder, can you set a store X units of this so that you don't end up selling stuff until you get that amount? I understand your question right here. You can't really store things, but when you take a look at the markets and the production and you know, those interfaces right there in those tabs, you will notice there is an excess of X, or there is a lack of X in a certain market or in certain provinces and whatnot. So I hope that kind of answers the question. I know it doesn't really, but you get the point. Throwing this comment at the start, you mentioned Serbia as the best for beginners. Normally that would be Ireland as tutorial island. Is it your opinion that's still the case, but Serbia is just in a great spot for beginners? So I didn't say it's the best for beginners. I think it's a great beginner nation, and this has been confirmed to me by the devs as well. It wouldn't normally be Ireland as tutorial island, at least not in EU4. Ireland never was. Ireland is pretty hard for a new player. Maybe it is on like CK3. The thing about EU5 is that big, like super big countries might feel too intimidating for newer players. Medium countries would be like, you're on the fence. And small countries, I'm talking super small, in a safe place, like in the HRE or Northern Italy, safe-ish, I think are better for newer players. So in EU5, Ireland might be coming back as a beginner island, tutorial island or whatever. I do think still Serbia is a great beginner nation because it does start off pretty powerful, and you don't really have a threat of Hungary. All the other nations around you are weaker, and by the time you eat everyone up, you'll be able to beat back the Ottomans. So Ireland, tutorial island, might be a feature of EU5. It definitely wasn't in EU4, but I still don't really recommend huge countries for for beginner nations. Castile, Hungary, Naples, yeah, but I think England and France, for example, might be too overwhelming for someone that's never played any EU game and to start them off in EU5. Did you ever consider doing an Albania playthrough? If not, do you think they could be interesting after being able to separate from Naples? Yeah, for sure. I'll definitely be doing an Albanian nation in EU5 when it comes out. I think it's going to be pretty hard to break free from Naples, depending on, I haven't really checked out how that whole thing works, but there are a couple of nations over in Albania. Not sure which of them are Albanian, though some of them are like, the Anjou guys or whatever. But yeah, I'll definitely play them. How is comparable the game's performance to Vic 3? It's right now in the build that we got, it's worse than Vic 3 in my experience, but performance, as we all know, hasn't been worked on. And to answer this question as well, it has officially been answered by Paradox as well. The game will not be supported on Mac or Linux, at least for now. Will nations outside of Europe get mission trees on launch, or is it going to be Europe first and then the rest of the world? Also, is there even going to be mission trees? Well, I feel like this has already been answered. Then we have how the sieges work, like U4, where only siege events affect the siege progress, or is it like CK3 when there's base progress each month and events affecting it? It pretty much works like in U4, except I don't remember seeing any events to speed up the sieging. Although barraging and assaulting is way easier than in EU4, and it's not as costly. But yeah, siege is pretty much like in EU4. Wait, so you can automate everything? Well, not everything, but yeah, you can automate a lot of things. Does EU5 have the same kind of cascading tooltips as CK3? Yes, it does. Is there Hellenic Greece restoration flavor? I don't think so. What about Italian city-states and lordships? Do cultures give specific bonuses? I'm not sure what you mean about Italian city-states and lordships. Like, what's the question about them? What are they like? It's harder than I thought to play in Italy. I'm gonna be honest, especially because you have the Gulefs and Ghibellines or whatever they're called situation at the start, and cultures and culture groups do give specific bonuses. This is in the advancements section. So if you don't choose Conqueror, how will this affect your nation's run? So I mentioned in this video right here that there are certain automations you can choose at the start of the game when starting up a new game of EU5. Now, some of you guys have misunderstood. Those automations aren't locked in. Like, you're not locked into them. The game does choose them for you, yes, but as soon as the game starts, you can just turn them off. The only thing Conqueror does for you if you automate it, at least right now, is it builds you armies and navies. That's it. It doesn't go and fight the wars or declare wars or move the armies for you, right? There are certain army automations as well that you can tell them to fight, do logistics, siege, and whatnot. You get the point. How is control handled when the provinces are connected by sea or disconnected by another country or both? So I mentioned this, in the England example that I gave, that they have more control over stuff in France that they do in northern England, so it is proximity by sea as well. Disconnected by another country is an interesting one, because Byzantium, I think, has a province like that, and so does the Pope, but I think they have certain control buildings in them. Don't quote me on that one, though. So as for the empire thing, does that include Rome? You mean for the tier country formations? Yeah, that should be Rome, but the same thing as, like, If you're the Serbian Empire, I don't think you can form Rome. How's Scandinavia? I have no experience playing Scandinavia. I didn't try anyone over there. Do estates construct buildings on their own like in Miu? Yes, the burghers at least do. What do you think of location sizes outside of Europe in your experience? Location sizes are good outside of Europe, I'd say. They're kind of like you'd expect them in EU4, you know, in more barren places, bigger. One thing I'm not a fan of outside of Europe, and especially in Northern Africa, is that provinces and areas are so huge. For example, you know, areas, how many areas does Morocco have in EU4? Like 6 areas, which all have 3 or 4 provinces. Sure, now Morocco in EU5 does have like 300 locations, but there's only like 2 areas. So I don't really get that. Of course, that's all like, you know, visual things, but yeah. Can you hotkey map modes? Yes. Are we gonna have a 1444 start date? Right now it's only 1337. Would you say that most nations have enough unique flavor? The nations that have flavor, and I think there's about 60 of them if I'm not mistaken, I think they got enough flavor. Yeah. The nations that I played specifically with flavor did feel pretty good and pretty unique to me. Of course, it can always be better, but right now for launch, I think it's pretty good. Yeah, already touched on the missions. More, the way you get most permanent bonuses here is through the advances. No other start dates, at least not right now. Can you move a province capital like an imperator? Move a province capital? Now that's interesting. That's actually a really good question, and I wish I still had the game so I could check for you, but that's actually not something I even thought about. Good point. Remind me of this when I get access again. Is Ulm a playable nation? You know, I never noticed, but they gotta be, right? I don't think there's the feature where you can change the name of the country, but it is not Tlemcen. It's at least most of the Muslim nations are dynastically named, which is kind of cool, but also the Ottomans can lose their dynasty and then they're not the Ottomans anymore. Of course, the Ottomans do come back after a while, but you see so many of these guys in Anatolia, you're playing next to them and then you're like, wait, who's that? I thought it was Chandor or the Chandorids or whatever, or the Ayyubids, and it's a completely different dynasty, but it's the same nation. So at least, yeah, those nations, their name can't change, but I don't think you have control over it. Yeah. You can annex only locations. You don't gotta do the whole province. Did you experience nations outside of Europe? I mean, depends on how you look at Europe, you know, at least in the EU4 show. I did play in Anatolia. I played as the Ottomans and those guys. But if you want to see good gameplay outside of Europe, check out Generalist's video where he played as Korea. Oh, and by the way, everyone, while we're here, if you're enjoying the EU5 content and you're excited to see more because there is going to be a lot more coming, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Not just EU5, we're doing EU4 and other things in the meantime, so I'd really appreciate the support, and you'd appreciate seeing brand new awesome videos in your feed every day, wouldn't you? And now we're in the Discord, ladies and gentlemen. Time to answer some questions from over here. There was a lot more questions, but yeah, this is the Nest. Join, by the way, link will be in the description. There's lots of great resources here for newer players for learning Europa Universalis 4 and 5. There's discussions going on all the time. People help each other. Games get organized. Super fun place. So yeah, definitely join the Discord. But now let's answer some questions from over here. All right, first question from the Discord. Does your home city exist in EU5? Yes, it does. It existed in EU4 too, though. Will you do a giveaway? Sure, why not? Do you actually like the colonization mechanic, or does it feel like it just drags out the game? I do like the colonization mechanic. Does it feel like it drags out the game? Kinda, but I feel like that's the only reason for that is because it starts 100 years earlier than EU4, right? In EU4, you start off in what? In about 10 years, once you get the first idea group, 10 years-ish, you can start like colonizing and exploring. As Portugal, you can do it right at the start. You don't even gotta wait for an idea group. So just because it's so instant in EU4, it might feel like it drags out the game, but I think the colonization mechanics are good. Will you never make EU4 videos after EU5 launches? I mean, I am an EU4 main channel, right? That's my main game. Obviously, the sequel will become my main game when it drops. Not never, but you know, I might go back to it a couple of times a year, you know, just because I hold it in such high regard, but I will be shifting fully to EU5. How differently the economy impacts the game compared to EU4? Way more important, right? It's just, it's not even comparable, boys, how, on what scale the economy is in EU5, you know, especially with, most importantly, with population existing in it, right? Do disasters exist? Yeah, disasters exist. I feel like they're sort of maybe not as scary as they are in EU4 and maybe a bit easier to handle, at least, or were those disasters that I was getting. It's more so you get like these coup attempts and it's like a thing going on, right? So yeah, or a succession crisis or something like that. So yeah, I guess they would be like kind of disasters. Is an army movement the same as in EU4, as in moving armies between provinces, or is it closer to Victoria 3? No, you just grab an army and just click on a province and it goes there. I mean, how do you make population grow? Conquer more land. There's always population there, baby. Is it confirmed all countries will have parliament function even though it's not historical? So yeah, I talked a little bit about the parliament in the previous video, saying how not everyone had a parliament. And a lot of you guys pointed out in the comments, and you're right, and I did change my opinion on this, that it's calling the parliament is basically more like calling the diet in the estate thingy in EU4, right? So there are unique parliaments, and it's not a parliament like it's in, for example, for Britain or whatnot, but I think every country has it. It's basically calling the diet, though. What government types exist in EU5, and what's the difference do they have gameplay-wise? It's pretty much the same government types from real life and from EU4, man. You got monarchies, you got republics, this type of monarchy, that type of republic, you know, theocracies and whatnot. It's you know, the same government types that exist in real life. How similar is it to other Paradox games, like percentage-wise? I mean, pretty similar to Vicky 3. It's pretty similar to Imperator. Small elements from Crusader Kings and from Hoi 4. Big elements from like Victoria 2 and EU3 as well. EU4, obviously. It's basically a jack of all trades, and it might even be a master of all if things continue to develop positively. Did my version have achievements? If yes, what I think about them? My version did not have achievements. Is the gameplay geared towards national unification and becoming an empire, or will it be fun to play a full game as, for instance, a pre-unitary state in Italy without forming Italy? The gameplay is still geared towards expanding. Obviously, boys, this is the Europa Universalis franchise we're talking about, but playing tall as a small nation and not growing that much, for example, like this right here, is way better, and there's way more things to do when playing tall, as opposed to EU4 just building buildings and clicking dev and expanding it once in a while. You know, there's so many things you can do. You can try and be like the production leader of that good. Maybe you're the only guy that produces those things, so then you sell them and then whatnot, and you can impact nations like that, and you can, you know, poke around, play as a bank, give loans and stuff like that. So yeah, smaller nations playing tall, way more fun. Now, obviously, I'm skipping some of the questions here, boys, because there are just so many of them, but do you think there will be national ideas again like in EU4? No, that's been replaced by the advances. How quick can you increase control of a state? Is it really a big roadblock or something easily overcomeable? Really depends on how fast you expand, man. Really depends on how fast you expand, because you don't really increase control of a state. You do it on a province by province basis, and then with buildings and with the cabinet actions and with roads and with how close it is to your capital, and, you know, via sea or via land. So it's not really that big of a roadblock, but it is something very important. I think it's more important than autonomy, which is sort of the thing it replaces from EU4. Is those still great projects? No, not that I can remember. No, I don't think there are great projects, but countries do have unique buildings only they can build, so that's not really replacing great projects, I guess, but it's something. When is the release date? I don't know, boys. Due to the whole new CB system, could you explain a little more how hurting a no CB would be in EU5? It's really not as bad as in EU4, at least on the version I played. That's I can say about that. Does gold exist, and is it as OP as EU4? Yes, gold does exist. It's not as OP as EU4. Can small countries with low trade power and low population do something when neighboring giants? Yeah, they can do a lot of things, man. Well, I haven't really been in that type of scenario where I'm like, I don't know, playing as Ramazan in EU4 right next to the Ottomans or the Mamluks, but playing small countries with low trade power and low pops isn't that difficult if you're in the neighborhood of other small countries, like in the HRE or Northern Italy, for example, or stuff like that, right? You expand slowly, but the thing is, when expanding so slowly as these guys that are so small, well, one of the location minors even, is that you have like 80,000 people, and then you conquer 2 locations from your neighbor, and you have 300,000 people. So that growth, percentage-wise, is insane. Is Byzantium any good, and does it die at the start of the game like in EU4? No, it doesn't die as quickly as it does in EU4. It does have the whole Civil War thing. It is pretty good, although it is really hard. How many DLCs will have to come to make it playable and enjoyable? I think none, man. I think it's going to be pretty good at the start. Do you think EU5 is for EU4 players or for a different audience? For EU4 players and for a broader audience at the same time. 5 best beginner nations in your opinion? I would have to say Ottomans, Castile, Serbia, Hungary, and let's say whichever minor nation one location minor nation in the HRE you can find. Do you think EU5 will be easier or harder to make harder than EU4 to make engaging YouTube content for? Good question. I think at the start it'll obviously be easier because people want to know more about EU5, right? So there'll be more people interested, but I've said this a couple of times, the things I personally like EU4 about aren't necessarily things you're gonna see in every EU5 video, right? And I'm talking like Protestant Reformation, colonization, stuff like that, certain countries forming, certain countries blowing up. So I think initially it'll be easier, and then I guess it would get a little harder, but by the time it gets harder, I'll know more about the game, so let's call it, I think it'll be about the same. Which nation has the most events? Shoot, I didn't know this. It's gotta be like the Ottomans or France or England or someone like that, boys. Does EU5 come with whole EU5 DLC mechanics for things like colonization or horde raising or Mandate of Heaven? Good question. It can't really be answered one-to-one because there's so many mechanics from EU4 that don't show up at all in EU5 and which I think are unnecessary, like what is even, I don't know, concentrating development, right? Do you guys think that will be in EU5? No, of course not, but the mechanics that do translate from EU4, and there is a good amount of them, pretty much everything that is relevant, I think they do translate pretty well. Is Portugal still the best country to play Colonial? Yeah, probably. What rough percentage of EU4's total features can be seen in EU5? Hard question to answer, boys, just because, like I said, it's not a one-to-one thing. It's not like EU3 to EU4 or CK2 to CK3 or whatnot. It's a completely different game, man, that a lot of mechanics are either replaced with something else or that don't work, just because EU5 is so much less abstract than EU4, right? It's mostly like things from real life as opposed to concentrating development or monarch points. Are there people groups kind of like tribes in EU5? Yes, they are. Will there be some sort of historical like technological penalty like it was before the institutions update in EU4 for Eastern Europe, Americas, China, and other continents? I'm sick of seeing natives being so technologically advanced as the European colonists. It kills the game borders and the history. Yeah, kinda, because there's the whole advancements mechanic, right? And each of the ages in EU5 have certain institutions within them, which is pretty similar to EU4. But each of these institutions unlocks a branch of the advances for you, right? So for example, all of the Europeans start off with Renaissance and banking. I think those two institutions, or it wasn't those, whatever it was, but they don't have meritocracy, which is in Asia. So as the European guys, sure, after a couple of years playing the game, you do get the meritocracy coming in from Asia, but there's simply no way for the natives, for example, to get like professional armies or meritocracy or whatever from Europe, right? So as long as you don't have an institution, you can't research that branch of the advanced tree, so I think it will be better than EU4. If you were to compare EU5 expansion to EU4, which one would you say is more difficult and by how much? Also, does AE play a bigger role in EU5 than it did in EU4? So aggressive expansion isn't in EU5, it's been replaced by antagonism, which is pretty much the same thing. I would say it's it's higher for taking the same things as you would in EU4, but it's not really one-to-one because of all the locations and stuff like that, right? So you can compare this, I don't know, let's say if, for example, as Hungary, you conquer Wallachia, to go back to that example once again, in EU4, it's really not that big of a deal, right? You just conquer Wallachia, it's pretty simple. However, in EU5, you're conquering like a lot. Like Wallachia is huge, right? So in that sense, it's different. I wouldn't say it's more difficult by that much. This is, of course, regarding the aggressive expansion and how much it generates. But expansion is about the same. Integrating and actually keeping control of and getting the maximum out of stuff you conquer in EU5 is harder than EU4, though. Yeah, like this commenter said, AE is less relevant because of other factors limiting expansion. Do you know if late game EU5 will actually have more flavor than it did in EU4? I think so, man. The developers are quite heavily pushing for content in late game and wanting players to actually experience the late game. What kind of individual flavor are we looking at on a nation-to-nation basis? I understand estate privileges are different, but like what else? How do dynamic missions fare from what we have in EU4? So I'm not even going to talk about missions once again, boys, because as we all know, that system is being changed. But the individual flavor you're looking at on a nation-to-nation basis is events, and then everything that they have in the advancements, which let's call it national ideas for now. Let's call the unique advances national ideas or something like that. So there's that. unique government reforms, unique estate privileges. So pretty much the things that make unique nations unique in EU4 are the same things that make nations unique in EU5 right now, except for mission, right? Everything else that's unique in EU4 is also unique in EU5. It's just that things are in different places. Like I said, national ideas don't really exist. They're part of the advancements, which are unique to nations, but also can be, you know, culture specific, culture group specific, religion specific, region specific, and whatnot. Yeah, of course, unique units. I forgot to mention that. Unique units is a lot more common in U5 than in U4. So yeah, another question on how PUs work. I feel like I answered this at the beginning when talking about subjects. Will only historical nations colonize? If the right circumstances occur, could we see non-common colonial incidents? AI colonies from rich Venice or Florence would be interesting to see. It's interesting that you point this out because every nation can colonize in EU5, right? Or like settle uncolonized land next to them or whatever, or explore or whatnot. It's not like tied to idea groups or anything like it is in EU4. But I'm sure that, I guess nations will be nudged towards it. Like, they're probably going to have to make Portugal, Castile, and England and France and those guys do it, right? But could we see someone else do it? If they're rich enough, I think so. But probably as common as it would be in EU4, right? Like, sometimes you see the Ottomans and the Mamluks and Hadramut and Hormuz and guys like that do it, but not really, right? So I think historical versus ahistorical, it'll be about similar as it is in EU4. How long EU5 will take A to Z as an estimate? 15 years? Just kidding. Yeah, I said I'm gonna do A to Z in EU5, man, but we gotta figure out which nations to play, yo. As you all know, we do the ones with national ideas, unique ones in EU4 only, but it's different in EU5 because national ideas don't exist. So maybe nations with unique advancements we can do, but I don't know how many of them there are going to be at the start, probably like 60-ish, and that's really not enough for me to start A to Z, so I need suggestions, man. What kind of nations do I play in EU5? Obviously, I can't do all of them, boys. There's going to be thousands. In fact, there's about 327 nations in the HRE in EU5, which is only slightly less of my 400 and something that I need to do in EU4 A to Z, so you get the point why I can't do everyone, right? Do you think EU5 should be more like EU4 V2 or a new game entirely? I mean, should be? I don't know about should be, but is it like EU4 V2? Definitely not. Good question here. Do empires rise and fall throughout history like we were promised, or is the thing where EU4, where whoever is a great power stays a great power until the end of the game? So I really haven't played a single campaign that long, boys, to where I could notice this. Like, I didn't play anyone to like the 18 or 1700s or anything like that, right? So I couldn't really notice nations rising and falling, but that should be in the game based from what I've heard. So I already answered what nations I believe are beginner nations in EU5, like beginner friendly. I think I listed 5 of them. What did I say? Like Castile, Hungary, Serbia, Ottomans, a one location HRE minor. What nations did I play? Let me see. Can't remember every nation that I played. I played Castile. I played Aragon. I tried Granada. I think I did Morocco. Did the Ottomans. Did Serbia. Did Byzantium. Did Hungary. Did some guys in the HRE, did Florence, did Naples. I don't know. I guess I played about 10-ish nations, man, if that's all of them. Will Ottomans have Aeolite? I actually don't know that. Good question. I do not know that. Sorry, boys. Does EU5 have alternate start dates? Yeah, a lot of people asking about this, man. And no, EU5 doesn't have alternate start dates. And honestly, I don't think it will. Just from talking to some of the devs right here regarding start dates, man, their internal data suggests that whenever there are alternate start dates, and this is even for CK3, by the way, like something like 90-something% of players just play whatever is the earliest one. So would I like an alternate start date? Yes, I'd love 1444, but will that, you know, work that needs to be put in be worth it? Probably not. Is Biz pain to play? Yes. Do loans exist? Yes, they do. How do I feel about the 1337 starting date? It's growing on me. In the HRE interactions, is the HRE formable? Yes, the HRE is formable. Can you make bigger alliance pacts involving more than one nation? You can make defensive pacts. Can we marry our sister? I don't know. Do we see any generals in game? I don't remember. Yes, generals exist. They're part of your characters or whatever. I did not have an opportunity to look at Vij during my playthrough. I do think it's going to be one of the more fun nations in India, though, in EU5. How many provinces in Lithuania? I don't know. Hundreds? 1,000? I don't know. Guys, does the Red Hawk think EU5 is better than EU4? I do not think EU5 is better than EU4. I do think it is gonna be better than EU4 though. Can you move your capital? Yes, I think you can move your capital. Let's see right here. And you know, with skipping questions and stuff like that, we've pretty much gotten down to the bottom of this list right here. So there you have it, boys. That's about all the time I have to answer for questions for today. I'm leaving on a trip tomorrow, so I'm kind of rushing to get this video out. There's a lot of other things to do, but I think we're gonna go ahead and call it right there, ladies and gentlemen. Answered any questions that I knew how to answer. Of course, skipped over a lot of them, but make sure to keep asking questions, keep being curious and whatnot, because this is shaping up to be a pretty good game right here. So yeah, I think that's gonna be about it for now for this EU5 questions video. I should have more, maybe a couple more EU5 videos coming up in a couple of weeks or whatnot when I get back from the trip. But yeah, man, that's all the questions you guys had. You guys made your opinions clear about certain things on the past video. You made your first reactions clear on the initial video. So yeah, man, I think EU5, as long as they handle everything they need to handle, is shaping up to be a quite nice game. And I'm actually really glad that it got opened up and shown to the broad audience so early, just so the casual player, like a lot of you guys watching right here, can go ahead and express their opinion to Paradox and whatnot, and not just us ultra nerd gamers that hang out in the forums and whatnot, because I do think the average player's experience and you know, wishes and you know, all of those things are important and need to be heard. But yeah, that's about it for EU5 questions, man. That's it for me for now, and I'll see you next time.